Good afternoon, everyone. Eric Mashinsky here. I am the founder, and you call me the president of Phenom Ventures LLC, which is my personal holding company that I own 100%. It's a limited part, it's an LLC that I also use for many of my investments. It's an investment holding company as well. It also owns operating businesses, and many of you that are going to hear this are a part of that. Vis-a-vis the gold investment letter, which is the most popular letter that I have, that I've been working on and building subscriber base and relationships since 2011. It goes well before that, that I've been working with investors since the age of 20, when I became a licensed stockbroker in Chicago. I left that business and 6 licenses that I had in 2011 to take advantage of the Freedom of Information Act and be able to talk about whatever the hell I want to via a newsletter within certain parameters, obviously. But as a broker, I was trained, and it was probably good for me to stay within a very, very fine set of rules of what you couldn't do, what you couldn't say, what you could do, everything from marketing to, I learned very, very early on, you never make a guarantee about an investment. And that was a very good principle that I've stuck with my whole life. And anybody who does that, run the other way. But in any event, I've had a number of different operating businesses in the newsletter area. My second newsletter right now that's a primary focus is the Phenom Crypto letter, phenomcrypto.com. I also own eliteinvestments.com, the blackgoldletter.com, which has not been as active as I had planned that it would, being in the energy and oil sector. I also have gone away from it because the newsletter business has taken up a lot of, and my investments have taken up a lot of my time. But I launched in 2011 and made a living from the data business. And, meaning I congregated and found and had ways of generating fresh data of particular demographics and types of people that I would then package up and sell online. So I'm an internet entrepreneur. I'm an internet marketer, if you will. But at the core of who I am and what I do, I'm a professional investor. Okay. And the older that I've gotten, I just turned 49. I know I only don't look a day over 61. But basically, the fact is that I got in this business with no money, no resources at the age of 20. I had to learn how to survive, and I made a tremendous amount of mistakes in my investing career. What I'm honing in on today, and the message for today, trust me, this is going to be very succinct, because it's the biggest problem that we have as investors in the mining business. Okay. And all of us are aware of it, I think, to some degree or another, but for whatever reasons, because sometimes when things become, even if they're unjust, dishonest, whatever it is, they're around for so long, you accept them as normal practices. What I want to talk about today is the utter disgrace that is management and boards of directors en masse in the junior mining resource sector. I am not talking about everyone. There are exceptions to the rule, but we've got a problem in this industry, especially the lower down you go in the size of the juniors. Problem number one, the one that bugs the shit out of me and should bug a lot of you, is the Vancouver lifestyle companies. What does this mean? This means that you get, and the issue with the mining, the things that I think are a real challenge for people that run these companies that are just legitimate natural things, is that a lot of times there'll be geologists and technical people that understand the earth and the minerals and metals thereof. But going on to raise financing and your stock structure and, Bay Street, Wall Street, House Street, whatever it is, and dealing with investors and marketing your story is like a foreign language. And that's okay. But the ones that have stuck around, the ones who have been around, you have no fucking excuse at this point to have gotten that part of your business locked down, because it is all together what makes these companies either successful or failures from the input of the people that finance these businesses. On the other hand, you have the promoters and you have the capital markets guys, which would be somebody like me. So I'm not talking negatively about all of these people, and I'm not talking about them together, actually. But you have a lot of people that are promoters by trade that will find assets to put into a public vehicle in a shell and very distinctly operate that situation for a certain amount of nurturing, spending a lot of money on marketing, getting their paper out of the deal. Many times this is hidden, it's not in their own names, and there's a lot of people that are left holding the bag. The capital markets folks, I've actually had some success with capital markets folks that are running companies, starting companies, on the board of junior mining companies, because at least they understand part of the financial components, the importance of marketing a story, but they don't do it dishonestly. And then they end up being a good judge of character in terms of needing engineers and geologists and metallurgists that they bring on, just like I need to do. When I evaluate a certain property, for example, I've got interests in probably hundreds of properties around the world that are, mineral-based prospects. I have to rely on technical folks because I'm not a geologist, I'm not a metallurgist, and I'm not an engineer or a mining engineer. But I have been able to develop a cachet of folks that I trust. And if you ask 10, geologists about a certain area or aspect, it's the same thing as asking a doctor about a problem in your body. You're going to get 10 different answers, right? But that's okay. That's not the problem here today. The problem is, and I see this mostly in the TSXV and the CSE, this doesn't just apply to mining companies, by the way, but I want to address our baby today, the mining companies. And the reason I also want to address it right now is because we have just ended a 3+ year bear market, going on 3.5 years. It started in August of 2020. A lot of the smaller companies have been utterly decimated and assets are trading for fractions of their value. Okay. What has happened though during that period of time is that, and I'm not saying that all of the mining companies, that are run by geologists and that have boards of directors that are, out to lunch, so to speak, a little bit, not able to help companies for the stage that they're in. They're definitely not all bad people. I've met some wonderful people in the business, and many of them have good intentions, but we know what they say about good intentions. Maybe you should go watch Pulp Fiction and find out about good intentions. Good intentions don't mean much when you are president or CEO of a publicly traded small company for 3 of them and taking a consultant fee for a 4th, and on the board for a 5th and 6th. And you're living in a very posh neighborhood in Vancouver or wherever you live in the world, because you're pulling a salary from 2, 3, 4, 5 different companies. I think the maximum that I look at going forward, and the solution to this, guys, is from the investor side. If we don't give them money, they don't have companies to continue to run and suck resources from, without putting some of their own skin in the game and their ass on the line, which is what I do all the time. I put all of my resources and all of my energy and faith and belief into very few things. And I've failed before. I respect highly anybody who's swung the bat in the mining business and you came up empty, but you weren't working with being the president or CEO of 3 different publicly traded companies where you're taking a $10,000 or $15,000 a month salary. And the issue with this is not even just the money, really, because that's not a lot of money for any one particular company. The issue is you're not putting any pressure on yourself for the one company that, say, for example, somebody like myself or another investor has put a big bet on because they believe in you and they believe in the asset and they're counting on you to go ahead and make that a winner. When your time is, there's 24 hours in a day, and when your time is spread that thin and you're putting 30% of your time here, I hear this all the time. Oh, you run 2 public companies. What percentage do you use in this one and that I'm running or that I'm investing in, and how much in the other one? Oh, that's only like 10-15% of my time. Oh, really? Do your shareholders know that? And it's bullshit anyway. What happens when it's 3 or more? The problem is we don't know a lot about these things. So I would encourage investors, when you do due diligence on these companies that you're looking to invest in, you probe the shit out of the CEOs and the presidents, and you find out, A, what are they making, right? What is the burn rate per month on salaries? Because with these tiny companies, especially coming out of the bear market, they should be very low. They should be low. Now, anybody who's out there running these entities, actually, I want them to prosper as well. Obviously, we should all prosper together. We should all suffer together, just like those of us that are in stocks that have gone from 50 cents to 5 cents. But if you all the while are taking 20 grand a month out of the coffers and you haven't adjusted that, and you've got 2 other deals that you're the consulting president for, taking 10 grand a month, you're socking away $500,000 a year, and you really don't give a shit about any of the details in any of the companies because you got a great lifestyle. That's the Vancouver lifestyle model. It has to stop right now. Going into the next bull market, I'm making this video because I'm going to be doing some things that are different in terms of the companies and the people that I choose to back. And this particular issue is step number 1. I don't give a crap if you have the next Great Bear or whatever it is that's going to be the next Boise Bay. And I can see it, and people are telling me this in the asset, and I'm going to make 50 times my money. If you're one of these people that are doing this stuff, I'm out right away. I'll never look at your ticker symbol again. I could care less about the company, and I certainly am not going to finance the deal. That is one thing that I think, for principle's sake, investors can do a better job of doing the diligence and also saying no when you can tell something isn't right. The other issue is on the boards of directors. One of the things that has happened in many companies, just like in the world though, so I'm not saying that this is like just unique to this industry, like everybody's all fucked up. Like everybody's families got dysfunction and all this other stuff for the most part, like there's the top 10 or 15% that pretty much actually do have really healthy relationships and everything's all together. But a lot of people have been damaged, especially since COVID, like dynamics of families and of people and of friendships and of corporate structures have been damaged. But what I see too much of, way too much of, and I actually pulled out of a financing recently in a $5 million market cap gold company with a great project, couple of great projects in Nevada that had so much drama around the board fighting and the management of the board and all this static. It was like a soap opera. And I'm like, over what? Over what? You have a $4 or $5 million market capitalization company with $20 in the bank. And a lease on your primary project that's actually coming up in 3 years, that if you're not in production, you're going to lose it anyway. And you guys are spending all of your energy fighting each other over stupid shit that makes no sense whatsoever. That in that particular case, so what I did when I found and saw this stuff firsthand, I knew there was some stuff going on there. Everybody knows it with this particular company. It's like very well known on the street. But I looked up close and I'm like, what do I want to get involved in something like this? If people are fighting, if there are people fighting, excuse me, over the board and management in a company that has very little value right now, imagine what that looks like if they actually find something of value, or it turns into like a big discovery, or you get a bidding war for, the company for what they have, and a bull market when things are going up. You add greed to that factor, and it's a completely 100x ball game. And when I see what I see with the drama in a lot of these companies, guys, it happens in a lot of these companies. The only way that it really ends up getting straightened out is by the investors demanding that they get their shit together. And one of the problems I've seen on the board of directors of a lot of the junior companies is that a lot of these people, I'll say guys, there's guys and women obviously in these deals, but I'm just going to use that as a general term. A lot of these guys are useless. They're useless, not because they're useless human beings. They're useless because they're involved in a small deal that needs help with money, that needs help with maybe potential partnerships, that needs help with finding new projects. And then you've got somebody with a CV that actually worked at these blue chip type of deals. And to get out of the situation after a 3-year bear market, when you've got $47.50 in the bank, to get out of that situation, you need to be able to know how to be in the back alley of a tavern in the ghetto and fight your way out of that situation. You don't need some pristine guy in, the C-level exec offices who says, oh yeah, I helped with a deal back in 1987 where we sold this over to Newmont, and people made $250 million, and they actually didn't really even have shit to do with it. If they're not adding value, for those of you that are listening to this, that are actual CEOs of companies and are on the board of companies, if this makes its way to you, I would encourage you to take a very good look and inventory at your board of directors. And I'm not saying that you need to be mean to anybody or demean them in any way, shape, or form, but you certainly have the responsibility and the right to get in front of them and say, what do you believe that you've actually brought to the table in the last 12 to 24 months for this particular company that's added any value? See what they say. I got on a phone call with the CEO of a company that I already own 2.5% of myself before even talking to them, just because of where their property is in Nevada, because I think it'll be a layup that it'll get bought out. I had heard from some previous conversations that the CEO of this company was the definition of a Vancouver lifestyle guy. But at the same time, you have this great project. The share structure wasn't terrible. He didn't dilute the piss out of it. I'm going to get into that next. And I am going to ream some of you for some of the decisions you make in terms of how much money you raise and at what prices. But, and he had gotten some big investors in it, much higher prices. So I like coming in when, you've already got some of the best minds in the business that are down 80%. And a bear market, and I know there's value there, but there's just not a lot of interest. And the guy had been around for a long time, right? But he's got his fingers in. This one was like a lot of companies. He wasn't on the board as CEO of all of them. I think it was 3 of them. But then he was like an advisor or a consultant, which also means that they've got obligations there for another 2 or 3. So that turned me off right away, as well as the fact, I'll get into it in the financing side about how much stock is owned by the board and or management of these companies, because the days of not putting anything into your private placements or buying in the open market when your stock is literally very, very cheap and and you still won't do it because you're like, well, my job is here, so I have to protect that. And you don't have the balls at all to do anything. It doesn't matter if you're rich. I need people to do something uh, in those cases. And I'll get to a case study in a minute about how that affected how I treated somebody years later that had their job on the line. But this particular CEO brings a consultant on the phone. Okay. So this was an introductory call that was supposed to be me and the CEO. One of my investors, one of my friends, introduced me to the guy and came on. I think he was on the Zoom call too. So there's four of us, and he was just being quiet. He's like, I just want to make the introduction and you guys should chat. Because Eric, he's a shareholder, he's a large shareholder, he could buy a lot more stock, and he wanted to see what's going on here. So the guy introduces himself, and he was very old, by the way. And I'm actually a believer to a degree in something that is going to be controversial for a lot of you to understand. But I believe we should bring ageism back into popular fucking society, particularly where it starts at the top of our political structure, where you have geriatrics wearing diapers that are running against each other to run our country. It's just pathetic. Look, you can be I have an 82-year-old friend who's in better shape than I am, and he has more energy than I do. If it's somebody like that, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about traditional people that are in their 70s, 80s, or 90s that are still trying to keep a certain active role in businesses because of their fucking ego. And that's it. Because they think if they take their name off the door, all their identity is going to go down the drain. Guess what, guys? There's more to life than stuff like that. But in any event, this guy comes on, and he was obviously an older gentleman. I don't know how old he was, but I would guess, mid 70s to 80 years old or something. And he was introduced by the CEO, and that he was this consultant and helps him. He's got a background, and he introduced himself with this background of like 35, 40 years in the mining business. And he does this, and this, and he's had experience in all these areas. And I'm like, tell me, George, or whatever his name was. So what do you consult on here for this company? He breathes a heavy sigh and goes, that's a very good question. Can you believe that shit? The guy didn't even know what the hell he did for this company. And the CEO was dumb enough to put this guy on a phone call with me that I was trying to just get to know the CEO. And I'm like, so you're bringing a guy like this on a call with a potentially fucking huge investor who can buy up half of your company in the open market and drive your share price up 3 times. And you bring George, or whatever his name was, the consultant, the veteran consultant. The only comments he made on that thing were like almost like a little bit contentious that made no sense whatsoever. Okay. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, what is going on here? The reason I mentioned bringing ageism back is we do have an issue in a lot of different industries where, things like mining, there's not a lot of people that are young that are coming into this business, because they're going into tech and they see money being made in digital or crypto or things like that. But we need them, and we need to nurture them, and we need them to be around. And when there is a younger type of a CEO that might be a little bit green, but they're trying, I'm all for trying to help those folks, because they're the next generation that are going to hopefully be able to pull some of this stuff out of the ground so we can actually see the world go around. But I say that comment in a sense that the reason I make that comment is because, like, there's even one of these companies, it was the one that I mentioned at the beginning with the soap opera drama. I had funded that deal for years on my back, 3 years, probably $7 to $10 million in funding. And there was one of the founders that was on the board. And I'm looking at the board, and I go around the board of directors the first time that I talked with everybody. And I said, how many shares do you own? And you, and you, and you, and you, and you. And the founder didn't have any. And we had to schedule that board call on a certain day of the week, because it was the only day of the week that this guy who had retired to Panama or something like 5 years earlier, he only checked his emails once a week and would do calls the day after the day that he checked his emails. I'm like, what the fuck are you still doing here? You're taking up a board seat where somebody could actually be helping a struggling mining company move forward. And the only reason you're still here, and I told him this to his face, is because of your ego. You have some pride thing that, you co-founded the company, which is great. God bless you. But you're retired. You're retired. You don't even work. You check your email once a week. You can't help us. And I said, you got to go. Like, I'm not an activist investor. This is the other thing I want to make clear. I'm traditionally not an activist investor. There are particular things that I get involved in, usually when I'm asked to or I'm pulled into it, when there's something that just can't be rectified between, competing members in some situation. But I don't want to be an activist investor. I don't want to watch the board with a fine-tooth comb and look through the minutes. I want to trust that who I'm giving my money to has some capability of actually moving something forward and having a positive effect. So let's move on. I think this might be the last point, is the financings. The best way to lose me is to over dilute the shit out of your share structure, because you don't think at all like an owner of the business. And that goes back to the Vancouver lifestyle thing. A lot of these guys, they get options every year and they think, okay, well, if it ever works out, they don't say it's going to work out, because I'm going to make it work out. And I've already got money in here and I'm not going to let this thing fail. They say, yeah, if it ever works out, if this is one of the 5 that I'm in that work out, that I didn't have to pay any money for the stock, then I'll make some cash and I can, retire. But in the meantime, I'm going to focus on my salary and taking care of my family. So that's the model that ends up coming in there. But when you don't have any money in these deals yourself, that's a big problem. That's a big red flag for me at this point. I'll give you one story and then I'm going to go on to the financing and the structures. The capital structure is the most important thing that I look at when I'm looking at investing in a new company. And I'm going to get to that in a second, because it is the biggest thing that mining industry people fuck up all the time and destroy value for us as investors all the time. And it's got to stop. So there's a CEO of the drama company I talked about, coincidentally, going back years prior. He was the CEO for part of the time that I was financing this deal. And he ended up kind of reverting back to the head of VP of exploration, which was a more appropriate role for him. He didn't really have like a personality of a CEO, I think, but I noticed 2 things about the guy. Even though he had a bit of a weakness in terms of, he wasn't going to be, Ross Beatty running the company and, or Frank Juicer or something. He just didn't have that in him, which is okay, because I know 2 things. One is he was trying his ass off. He was really trying to make it all work, and he believed in what they had. Okay. So that goes a long way. And the other thing is, even though this was not a rich, wealthy man, he was old enough that he would be classified, and he's also an insider, so I think that there's lesser rules, but he would be classified as an accredited investor. I don't know if he made 200 grand a year or if he had $1 million in net worth, but he wasn't a wealthy guy. And I know that not everybody's a wealthy person. They all say, oh, well, if you've got money and you're rich, you can put money in these things. No. Do you ever notice, for those of you that raise money on non-brokered private placements, how many people call you and try to put 5 or 10 grand into these things? I actually don't do that with my group. We usually have like a $20,000 minimum. If we're going to convert our money together and go in and lead a placement, I think that's a fair number. But look, the point is, there were either 2 or 3, definitely 2 financings that we led as a group in that particular company, where the VPX, who was now the CEO at that time, and I told him, I made it clear to him how disappointing it was and how pissed it made me that nobody on the board is doing this and any of the placement. And he put in 10 to 15 grand in each of them. 10 to 15, that was it. Okay. And this has got a really good point to the story. But before I say that, let me say that the chairman of the board of that company at that time, I said, how much are you putting in? He had been the chairman for a long time. And he'd been in the business for a long time. And he was also over 65. And, I said, what are you going to do? This is the cheapest that the stock has ever traded. And you believe in the thing. How much are you going to put in? Full warrant. Well, Eric, this is kind of out of my risk profile. I'm technically retired and I'm over 65. And it's kind of a high risk thing for me at my age. I said, are you fucking kidding me? Then it's a high risk thing for you to be the chairman of the board of too. Well, let me talk to my wife. He literally gave me the let me talk to my wife thing. I never forgot that. And actually not long ago, there was a situation with this particular company. Some of you might know who I'm talking about if you know me well or whatever, where with fighting factions, okay, one of these factions wanted the VPX now, the guy who's the VPX that was the CEO, out of there, along with the financing. They wanted him gone. They wanted a new, they believed that he made some errors and wasn't doing enough to earn his salary and didn't explore in the right, areas of this project, which again, everybody's got different opinions on. And the chairman had a target on his back from this other entity as well. And most people knew that he was, I hate to use the word useless. I'm sure he helped in some way, shape, or form, but his skill set and where he was at in his career just wasn't, adding that much value. And it's important who you have on your board. You should have your board introducing you from time to time, at least, to investors, to strategic partners, to projects, to something they should be bringing to the table that could add value to the company. Even if it doesn't work out and go through, they need to be swinging the golf club or bat a little bit to show that they care that they're even there, right? Instead of just collecting their freaking options. And in that case, I had no problem with the chairman going, and it ended up all being all set up that he was going to bounce because they couldn't raise any money without, us coming in. And he realized it was the end of his road or whatever, but I had nothing against him personally, at all. But the VPX, when they were starting, this other group was demanding that he had to go, I called him and myself, and I said, just because I was the key to the financing of like saving the company basically and turning it around, rebranding it. I called him and I just said, listen, just so you know, these guys want you out. And it's not me. It's not me. I've always had a good relationship with you. I'll call him Mike. I've always had a good relationship with you, Mike. You've always tried your best. I always appreciated that, even though you didn't have a lot of money, you participated in those placements. You bought stock in the open market. You have a good position and you believe in the projects. And I said, whether or not you're the best, geologist in the lineup or not, that's not even for me to tell, but I said, I don't care. What I want to try to propose here for you is that instead of them getting you out and firing you from the company that you've been with for so long, which actually was an important thing to do with symbolically, if you're going to rebrand a company, those two people were actually the ones that were with this company the longest, so it would show some changes. And I thought that could be important, but I didn't want to sacrifice the relationship. And I hadn't talked to him in years, it's been a while. I left that company when they kept screwing it up and messing it up. From different CEOs too afterwards. But anyway, I said, listen, what I'm going to propose is that you are not fired and you're cut back to a consulting agreement. And maybe you stick around at half of your salary on an as needed basis or whatever. And you could probably obviously go get another gig. But I'm like, they're adamant about getting you out of here. And I think I have the ability, I could tell them to fuck off, but it's going to cause lots of problems. But what I could do is I can come in the middle and I can, make sure you don't just get cut off right away and you can still make some money and be involved in the company, but it's just going to be less official as your role. And he agreed to that. And I don't know how much, if he appreciated my call, or he was kind of taken aback because of the fact that he didn't really know that he had this target right here on his head. But I learned later that he did, I think, appreciate that. And the reasons I'm telling this story is because I remembered his effort to put skin in the game. He did not have salaries coming from 4 different companies. He wasn't a consultant to all these different deals. He was in on that company and that deal only. And if he was a mid-level talent or a capability-wise person, I'll take it. We'll work around it. It ended up that they decided that they were going to part ways anyway. And one of the board members, who's a cheap bastard, was fighting about a last minute, whatever it is, employee, a contribution when he gets let go as a part of his contract. They were negotiating that down. And it got down to like a $20,000 difference. And I had told the CEO at the time, who was more of like a neutral entity to me, I said, this guy, on the board, I'm like, this is the difference between people like him and people like me. Even though you don't have any money, you're going to have some money in the bank when we finance the deal. This guy's been with the company for like 15, 20 years. I'm like, give him the 20 grand. Who gives a shit? Let him go away feeling like he has been somewhat valued, instead of grinding him down to save. At the end of the day, the company's going to save 10 grand. And it was all led by this board member. And at the end of the day, with that particular whole story, when I saw all this stuff, the deal all blew up, because I said, I'm out. I'm not getting involved in this freaking nonsense. But anyway, I give that story to let you know. And the last thing is the financing. So I'll give you an example of one that I'm going to name by name. 1911 Gold, AUMB is the symbol. This company I ended up recommending years ago, and was run by a gentleman who had big company experience. And AUMB, I believe it's in Manitoba. They have like over 1 million ounce gold asset. They have a mill that's probably worth about 25 million bucks or more that's there. So they have equipment, they have assets, and it had started to get really cheap. I met him in person at BMO at the conference here, going back about 5 years ago. The stock was probably about 40 cents or so, and I had recommended it to my group. I never like asked them for money or anything, for like financing them or marketing it or anything. I'm an investor first and foremost. And I had relayed this to some of my people. And then I watch what happens. I watch what the CEOs do for execution. And if they break certain cardinal rules, I'm out. I'm ruthless at this point in my life. I don't rationalize shit. Like, oh, you're telling me that, yeah, this was a little bit slighted from what you said, you told me, but on the next one, you're going to give me even more, or give us more, or do more for everybody. It's not how it works. Make this situation right now, or I'm out. And when I get out of a deal that I own a lot of, it fucking hurts. Trust me. Anyway, sorry for the swearing, but this stuff is like, this is really a big problem in our business. There's actually, so I see lately, and I don't have the actual details in front of me, that there's a whole new group at 1911 Gold. And we're 3 years into a bear market, and the stock is at an all-time low of like 7 cents a share. It's trading for, $2 or $3 an ounce of gold in the ground. I think it's measured and indicated, actually, not inferred. I'm not positive. I don't recall. They've got this big piece of equipment. They have prospective land in Manitoba for a lot more gold, right? So I thought it was cheap at 40 cents. It's now 7 cents. So I put it on what I call my mini venture tiny cap list, where it's a sub $5 million market cap. It's got a real assets and management and all that stuff, and solvency. And they had a little money in the bank. They announced a private placement that gave away half of the company. And then they increased the placement to give up more than half of the company for a couple million bucks. And this is how you guys can end up if you don't understand how all this stuff works, if you're a CEO and a geologist and it's not quite all lining up for you on these things, or why some people get pissed and some people want you to raise more or less or whatever. Usually these companies want to raise more than is appropriate, so they know they're going to get paid and don't have to go back to the market. But if you're thinking as an owner, you're thinking to yourself, wait a second, at this price, at an all-time low, I'm gonna raise $2 million. So the rest of the company, everything that's gone into this company for 30 years, 25 years, or however long it's been around building up their assets and all everything else, that's worth $2 million to you, right? Maybe it was 2.5, something like that. That's what I would ask the CEO. Oh no, we've got this, then why are you raising $2 million and diluting the company by 50%? You have to think as an owner would. You want to give the company money so that they can stay solvent, number one, so that they can move forward in some capacity. But if I'm involved in a deal and any CEO is asking me my, consensus on these things, I say down, at these prices in this market, raise less. Because what none of these morons know, and I'll call them morons in one capacity, on the finance and capital markets side. Because when you make a decision like that, you are not very smart, okay? You might be the greatest geologist in the world or mining engineer, and I might be a moron as it comes to that, fine. But on the capital markets side, which I know like my DNA, you're an idiot. And what they don't understand is that in 60 to 90 days from now, this is being recorded after Christmas 2023, you can raise money at 50, 100, 150% higher prices just because the tax loss selling season has ended. We're going into a new year. And by the way, gold is almost at 2,100. When we get a monthly close of 2,100 or higher, whether it happens in December or it happens, I think it might take until January, your stock is going to go up 3 to 5x in a matter of 6 months. Just FYI, because that's what happens when you have a quadruple top that's been building itself for 12 years. Gold doesn't go from 2,100, an all-time breakout, to 2,200 and then stop and go back to 1,700. It's going to 26, 7, 800 on the first run. And within probably 18 months, you'll see it over $3,000 an ounce gold. How is that environment going to be for you to raise money? I'm not getting in your deal. I just sold all my stock when you freaking announced that deal, giving half of the money away. It shows you do not care about your shareholders and your investors, or you're stupid, or both. Bye-bye. There's so many opportunities out there. So then I'm going to end this. And there was so the last point is there's a group out there. Hey, God bless him. I believe his name is Terry, maybe it's Lynch. I had received, I think he was on the Gold Investment Letter a long time ago, and I had gotten an occasional email from him because he's actually the CEO of a publicly traded company. I give credit to guys like that actually reach out themselves to like people that are, whether they're a fund manager, a broker, a newsletter writer that can actually like leverage their activity if you can get our attention. Just sending a press release to me doesn't do much, but he had done it a number of times. I recognized his name. A few weeks ago, they did a call called the group is called Save Canadian Mining, and it's all about the problems that are happening in the background in the market, nuts and bolts, with naked shorting and the algorithms and the banks and the manipulation, if you will, of the stocks. I don't get into this that much. Like, we've seen JP Morgan Gold, these guys have gotten fined hundreds of millions of dollars for manipulating the silver market and all that. I really don't give a shit. Manipulation by big banks and stuff like that delays moves, but it doesn't deny them. And a lot of times they can be over exaggerated once they finally get overpowered by the marketplace finding price discovery. So you don't hear my newsletter talking about all that crap a lot, but in this particular case, I had recent experiences where During tax selling, during the bear market, towards the end, we were seeing many stocks that were just getting leaned on because they're trend followers, and they would short shit and knock these things down even further than they normally would ever go. And they would spoof the market, like meaning they're saying there's a bunch for sale when there really isn't. And I saw this with these little tiny stocks, and I was amazed because I've been doing this a long time, and I thought, why are they going to mess with these little tiny $5-10 million market cap deals? And I learned that they do it on every stock. And if you get a certain amount of transactions a day around the world, it adds up to a lot of money. But anyway, the only problem with that whole situation for me is the naked shorting. Naked shorting means that nobody out there, the banks, the brokers, the transfer agents, anybody is going to hold a short accountable for borrowing the stock to short it. Usually, if you're going to be a short seller, and I've shorted many stocks in my life, that entity, that broker, it's the problem here is mostly, I think, with the broker dealers and the regulators, and the market makers are a part of it, but that's not really their responsibility. It's the bank and brokerage firms, and it's the regulators that are out to freaking lunch as usual. But anyway, you have a situation where these stocks are being naked shorted. My whole thing when I started to learn about this with these small ones, I said, good, let them short it. They're going to get squeezed and make us so much more money on the way up when this market starts to turn. I'm all for it. If it's fair shorting, God bless it. I'm all for it. Let the victor be the victor, whoever's right at the end of the day. And, I'm betting on the long side for a lot of these things. But if it's a naked short and nobody's holding them accountable, you know what this means? That probably 30, 40, 50% of the sell volume on some of these junior mining companies is just sell volume, and the stock could go up tenfold and they never have to buy it back. They never have to cover it. They just fucking leave it there on their book, and they don't mark it one way or the other. And nobody holds them accountable to say you have to cover your short and you're getting a margin call because of it or whatever else. And this is happening around the world, and it is a problem. Okay. So there's a lot of really sophisticated investors, much smarter than I am, Eric Sprott, Rob McGeown. And I'm actually going to look to talk to Rob shortly. And hopefully Eric will talk to me as well about this case. He was on that call. Rob was not, but they've known about this issue for a long time, but it's just gotten worse. I want to get their opinion on some of the nuts and bolts of it. But as much as I am grateful for the Save Canadian Mining Group bringing this to people's attention, I got off the call and I'm like, they're not doing anything about it. What needs to be done, and I'll say it right now, if anybody from Save Canadian Mining is here or from any other entity, we need mining investors together to pool a legal fund that is formidable. And we need to hire the best attorneys in the world. A lot of us have money, guys. We can do this. It's not going to be that big of a problem when a group of investors comes together and puts a retainer down for whatever and says, get at these guys and go after their kneecaps. There's been some recent lawsuits that have sort of set this standard that could be interesting, but those aren't the answers either. You have to go at these guys that are doing this. You have to enforce it and start threatening the brokers and the banks, and then telling the regulators about what's happening and go at them like an absolute lion so that they stop and they do it on their own versus going through an entire lawsuit that's going to cost millions and take 10 years. I'll put the first $5,000 US down as a gift, as a grant to the legal fund. But they're talking about Canadian, Save Canadian Mining. They're talking about maybe it's time to do something legally or whatever. Again, God bless you guys, because you don't have to do that. You don't have to take that cross. Like Terry, you don't have to take that cross on your back, and you have, and you've been trying, and you've been putting, people together and creating awareness about it. So I commend you for that. But that time is over. The problem is clear to a lot of us that are very deep in this sector, and we have money to fight back, and we need to fight back now, and we need to let's do whatever we got to do. I'm not taking the cross on my back, but I'll give money. And I'll also spread the word through 60,000 investors in my newsletters and put a video together, and we can describe all that's going on. And it'll probably raise, 6 figures for a legal fund. We just want the best. I want the best legal, and I want somebody who's going to spearhead this, that's not going to dick around, and we're going to go after them. So anyway, these are some of the problems in our mining sector. And I wanted to bring them to the attention of everybody now, so that those of you that are CEOs of mining companies, all of this stuff, including what I'm talking about with the Safe Canadian Mining and the spoofing and the naked shorting and everything, you're the ones that can actually go to the transfer agents and go to the exchange and find out who the sellers are from Anonymous. And you should be keeping track of this and be able to share it with your investors that ask about it, instead of being clueless, because this is the lifeblood of your livelihood, capital, and we are your capital. And we want to support many of you that are trying to do the right thing, and everybody's beaten down right now. I'm not, and the reason I'm not is because I also invest a lot of money in crypto, and I've had my portfolios go up hundreds of percentage points in the last 120 days, and I'm shopping in the junior miners, and I don't even care if they're oversold, because I'm just going to clean them all up myself. But the point is I can see straight. I'm not under all this pressure where all of my stock and portfolio is down so much. My mining portfolio is down a lot for the last couple of years. I have a lot of big positions that are down, unrealized losses of 40%. I'm not worried about them, and I keep buying them, the ones that I believe in. But I think that we need the investment community to tighten this shit up, either work with the CEOs and the boards of directors if they get it and they're on board to get it and they're willing to make some changes and maybe even some personal sacrifices, like invest in your own freaking company, or you get them out, you throw them out. Or what's going to happen, and I'm going to be doing this very soon, and I will be letting more of you know, and I've been talking with folks behind the scenes. What's going to happen is I've been slowly throughout the year, especially, acquiring 3, 4, 5% stakes in a lot of these small gold junior companies. And then I look at who owns the rest, and some of them are friends of mine. And some of them are very rich people, and some of them are people that I don't know, but that want changes done. And what's going to end up happening is I'm going to buy your company right out from under you. We're going to buy it out. We're going to make a bid. We're going to have the board votes, and you're going to be out on your ass. And in that case, hopefully some people have a come to Jesus, that you're either going to now really expand your Vancouver lifestyle model because you lost one of your pieces of income, or you're going to say to yourself, this is the reason why I lost this gig. And if I would have just focused more on this and only maybe had one other company that I drew a salary from and put some pressure on myself to dig deeper into running this deal properly and run it as a winner, that it's going to be a winner no matter what. Listen, I understand that a lot of people, here's another thing, and I'm going to shut up and it's the end of the video. There are a lot of people in this business that are legends that have been around, that are getting into their 70s and 80s. When I made that ageism comment, just so you know, like about the presidents or whatever, I say that because I certainly wouldn't want to be running around with a diaper, having all those freaking responsibilities. I feel bad for both of those guys. Let them go to the beach and relax, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something where I'm just like, oh, you're old, you should be out of there. I think we should have, in our next elections coming up, there should be law put forth that you literally need to be below the age of 55 to run for president of the United States. Maybe 60, but 55 is better. 50 could even be the case for a little while, to start correcting this thing, because a lot of the people that are embedded in positions of power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This goes on a microcosm in some of these companies we invest in, and it goes on the biggest platforms in the world, in the political theater we watch around the world. But I know a lot of you, like, if some of you out there are watching this and you're like, yeah, that's all good and great, but guess what, man? I'm not 35 years old anymore. You know, I don't have the energy to be doing all this stuff. I'm just trying to, keep things steady. I don't want to leave anything in a bad state, and I'll hand it off at some point and, keep my legacy like intact or whatever. If you're at that point, you can be honest with people like me and say, listen, I'm looking for a way out soon. I just don't, I've got enough to retire, and I don't have what I had, even 10 years ago to get after it, to make trips to New York City and to talk to 50 investors, to go to conferences or to go to make calls, cold calls. Somebody who just invested 10 million into our neighbor. You're not calling that guy, telling him yours is better? Give me 5 million? Things like that, I know that these things can happen. So all I'm saying is, whether it's going to be willingly or unwillingly, because we're just going to take the companies. Some of the people with attitudes that are not going to change, that have destroyed shareholder value over long periods of time. You have people like me, and there are others too, just so you know, we have been stealthily taking control positions in your stocks. And you're going to get a call out of the blue, and it'll be a come to Jesus talk. And if you don't get it like that, you're going to be thrown out of your company. And getting thrown out of one with a call to the others that say, you're working with this guy. I was actually looking at your assets. They look good, but this guy's a fucking idiot, and we're not giving you money, could lead to your whole Vancouver lifestyle model blowing up in like a week. So I'm not doing this as a threat. I'm doing it as an awareness bell, an alarm bell, if you will, because I don't think that a lot of people have put this all together and actually drawn lines in the sand. I have boundaries now that if I see certain activities in companies, first thing I do is I stop buying, but then I sell quicker, or I never finance more of the companies, because you don't know all this and how people are going to act. I'd love to give people the benefit of the doubt on the front end. But if things started revealing themselves, last thing I'm going to say, promise, it's a quote from one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou, I believe, said this. When people first show you who they are, when people show you who they are the first time, believe them. Cheers, guys. Have a good night.